You're listening to 90.4 Aman FM. This is Sara Lawati, and I'm here with Mr. Raif Al Harthy, who is the Chief Growth Officer at Mubashir and is also an entrepreneur. And we're going to be discussing whether or not you need a business degree to be a successful entrepreneur. Mr. Raif, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for calling me in. The most highlighted part of my life, I believe, is me being a Muslim. Because that's the lens that I see everything and how I interact with everything else around me. In doing so, I try to become the best version of myself. So the concept of growth and always doing something that's out of the comfort zone, like this wonderful interview with you. And also, at the same time, looking at how do I impact the people around me, from my loved ones, if it's in the workplace, my colleagues or my founders. In my personal time, I think about how do you raise a nation? I'm a father of 4, so I have, practical examples of how I can apply it. I make a lot of mistakes in the process, but they tend to be very good mirrors in kind of reflecting what's going right and what's going wrong. From a professional perspective, I am a co-founder in Mubashir. I wear multiple hats as an entrepreneur, but one of them is being a co-founder in Mubashir, where that same message percolates into our vision as co-founders, which is to essentially communicate values through the mediums that we have, which is digital out-of-home advertising. So we look at infotainment and how can we embed information and entertainment so that people have just a better day. So anybody who comes and interacts with what it is that we're doing, end up performing better, interacting better with people. And that's essentially what I do.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. I'm very curious about the journey you've gone through and how you got to this place in your career. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So my career, I believe, started way before I actually realized that I started my career. When I was a child, I wanted to become a vet. It was actually quite interesting, very different than what I'm doing now. And I think that was in me kind of looking into the emotional side of, animals at that time. And then my dad was like, look, you can't treat sheep and stuff in this part of the world. Maybe if you're in a different part of the world. So you're going to have to find something else. And then as I finished school and then I went into university, I ended up taking mechatronics engineering. And in that process, what was interesting was that I wanted to improve the lives of people through automation, but I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to do it. So what I did was I took mechatronics engineering with the idea that I need to learn the engineering component in order for me to be able to do this. I didn't have the foresight at the time to kind of, or the vision at the time to see that there are multiple pathways to this. So anyways, I took engineering, which I'm grateful for, because what it is it built a construct in my mind. And the way I entered the engineering degree was also entrepreneurship training without me realizing, because what happened was when I signed up, it was the second semester. So I did my entire education starting with the second semester, then going back to the first. And then I went to the second year with the more advanced curriculum, then coming back to the first. So I had to always catch up with the foundational knowledge that everybody else had. And at that time, I thought it was, it was a disadvantage. But later on, I came to realize that every disadvantage actually comes with a package of advantages that you might not realize today, but you can actually build on tomorrow. And that gave the versatility of entrepreneurship, that I came through. So that's from an education point of view. I ended up taking mechatronics engineering, and then I went into oil and gas, where I became a completion well intervention engineer. So we look at enhanced oil recovery, etc. And I was in Russia for 2 years, in Siberia. And then I came back to Oman. And one day I was attending a lecture by Sheikh Al Isri, Allah yarhamah, and Ihab Al Hajj. And actually, in that, they were going through the cycle of, look, if you want to be an entrepreneur, then you need to give yourself a timeline and then just leave. So that's when I sat in the parking lot and I sent my resignation letter to the organization that I was working for at the time. And it was quite interesting because what I said was, it was an honor working for you, but I will work with you one day. And today, they're actually one of our clients. So this is me in a nutshell.
Wow. So you went from sheep or wanting to be a vet, I guess, to
Yeah.
engineering to business. And it sounds like a very inspiring story, but I'm very curious. You said that you learned a lot of, I guess, entrepreneurial skills through this journey, but can you pinpoint exactly what skills and how you learned them?
Sure. So I spoke about one aspect, which was the aspect of adaptability, which I believe is one of the most difficult skills to learn. And you just need to go through it. How do you adapt to change? How do you adapt to unforeseen? Because what happens in academia is that you have everything packaged very nicely for you. Life's not like that, right? So then when I left and when I finished university and I went to Russia, Russia was a different beast altogether. The culture is very different. We're very soft-spoken here in Oman. Russia's, went through the Soviet Union. So the weather was very different, minus 50 degrees, not being able to speak their language. I'm speaking Arabic, they're speaking Russian because none of us spoke English. Oh, well, I spoke English, but it didn't make a difference. So I might as well just speak Arabic. And then learning how to kind of maneuver, in that environment. That was really a very wild environment. I remember the first day I arrived, there was this kind of 7-foot Russian guy who was taking me around Siberia. And I see this big knife right behind his chin. I'm like, what's this for? And he says, midvid. I was like, midvid? What's midvid? He says, bear. I'm like, you have bears here? I was like, yeah, but I'm sure the inside. He's like, no, you might need it one day. I'm like, okay, but we're in a car. He's saying this car has a limiter of 40 kilometers an hour. That's the top speed of the bear. I was like, oh my God. So it was kind of going through all that and learning to acclimatize to these shocks to the system that I think eventually kind of turned me into a person who needed to always get that stimulus of something new, building something new, making something new. I didn't know it at the time, of course, but that's essentially what happened. I believe that everybody's path is very different. And not everybody's going to go through Siberia to get different exposures. And I believe each one of us needs to find what the path that they're going through is.
Wow, I feel like after having that possible or potential encounter with the bear, everything is kind of like a piece of cake afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, it does give you a nice perspective, but I think we face a lot of bears in business as well. So.
Metaphorical bears. So I'm very curious. So as you said, you come from an engineering background, and I want to know, do you believe that a traditional business degree still has value in today's market?
So, I mean, there's no silver bullet answer to a yes or a no. The answer is yes, there's always value. But the question is, what does an individual want out of that particular degree is really very important to consider. So, do you need a business degree to be successful? No, you don't. I have seen people who are extremely successful with no business degree. As a matter of fact, nearly no degree at all. We can speak about those later. But at the same time, it does give a head start. So having a business degree gives you some sort of a foundation that you can potentially use to, minimize some of the mistakes that you can do. But that's as far as it's going to get you. It'll open your horizons to certain things. The action, the execution that comes from actually doing business, and kind of the friction that you get from doing business is what you need in order to be successful. And that's why entrepreneurship is not for everyone. There's a kind of, we always joke inside the entrepreneurship sphere that you need to have something that went wrong with your DNA, for you to be doing entrepreneurship, because the loved ones around us tend to feel like we're always looking for hardship. But actually that's not the case. We're looking for the opportunity to create change, and change comes with friction. So it comes as part of the package. So yeah.
I feel like, there is a lot of truth to that. And I feel like some people also argue that on-the-job training actually gives you more practical insights into a business knowledge and business skill sets. What are some challenges that you faced during your entrepreneurial journey that you feel like, okay, I wouldn't have learned this through a business degree?
Wow. People. Just, interacting with people is something that we do, socially. and we do face friction in that process, and we learn. But doing it in business, that's where you really identify people. And you see, not everybody comes with the same shade of color. Some of them are bright, some of them are dull, some of them are more forceful, some of them are softer. Some of them report to you, some of them you report to, whether they are, your vendors or client relationship, etc. And in doing that, learning to interact within this metaphorical zoo is really very important. Otherwise, you either get eaten up, or you end up harming someone in a way that you could have actually created value, but instead of learning how to interact with people in a emotionally intelligent way, it ends up backfiring. There's a lot of. I came from a background where I just trusted everyone. This was my as a child, at least. That was my thought process. That's how I interacted. When I came into business, I had to change, moving from being an introvert to shifting, and all of a sudden having to. When people see me, this guy's not an introvert; he's an extrovert. It's not the case. It's just that we need to learn how to interact with life, and that adaptation to the business environment is what creates that change within a person, especially if you're reflecting on it all the time. So, yes, on-the-job training is good. I definitely would say anybody who has a chance of getting on-the-job training and hasn't started the entrepreneurship journey yet, go for it. I would never say no. It's better than sitting down. If you want to get the most expensive, that's the reality, and the fastest learning, start something. Yeah, because when you start something, you're actually putting your eggs that are in the basket, you're actually putting it in the field, which means it can be trampled on, which means that it can break. And when you know that it can break, the way you're going to interact with it is going to be a lot more, it's going to be different. Yeah. So start something and then augment that or add to that the educational component of constant learning. And if you always learn and you always have that hunger for learning, then you will learn what is relevant. So when you take your, for example, master's degree, like what you got, for example, your intentionality that comes in getting your master's degree is very different than my intention, for example, when I'm getting a executive, for example, education degree, or somebody else who's getting a different degree, or someone who's not getting a degree but is really searching or seeking for knowledge that will help them to participate in entrepreneurship in the way that they best can.
Yeah, I guess entrepreneurship is high risk, but also high reward, like they say.
It can be high reward. It's always high risk.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
So have you ever had instances in your career when you thought, okay, I wish I had a business degree, would have helped me solve a particular problem that you faced?
Yeah, definitely. Many times. And it was not about really having a business degree, if I can just backtrack slightly. It was more along the lines of if I knew how to do X or Y or Z, okay? So I graduated as an engineer. One of the companies that we started, my co-founder and I, one of my co-founders, was a food and beverage company. And, as founders in the first day, you're pretty much everyone. You're the tea boy, you're the guy who's cleaning the floor, you're the guy who's doing the accounting, you're the guy who's, as a group I'm talking about, like if you're 1, 2, 3, 4 founders. So you pretty much do everything, right? Which means that you need to learn how to become an accountant. And I was not an accountant, which means that I was making a lot of mistakes when it came to understanding, how money actually works. I remember the story of Richard Branson where he's sitting in a boardroom, if my memory serves me right. And he hears his CFO saying, our gross profit is X, and he mentions this really big number, and Richard Branson gets really excited. And the CFO looks at him and says, "Can I have a minute with you, please?" He says, "Yeah, sure." They leave the room. He says, "So just to get things in perspective, your gross profit is a net that we've cast from the ship, and we caught, let's say, 100 fish." He said, "That's great." He said, "Yes, but there's a hole in the net. And by the time we put it on the ship, we have 2 fish left." He said, "That's not so great." He said, "Exactly, let's go back into the boardroom." So the idea here is not about, you knowing something when you're starting, although knowing it will give you a head start. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's...
I mean, I have 2 business degrees and I still don't know how to do accounting. So I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, you at least learn once you get to a certain position, you need to know the accounting statements in its basic form if you want to really understand what's happening with your business. So for myself, being in business for a while and entrepreneurship for a while, these are 2 different things. But essentially, participating in that, I had to learn how to read it at least, right, and ask the right questions, and then you go through different things. So we recently got invested in by the Oman Investment Authority through ITHCA, the investment arm that invests in technology, and we went through a due diligence exercise, and that had a commercial component, it had a legal component. Now the commercial component really put us in a position where we had to learn stuff that I personally didn't know. So, certain ratios, etc., and interacting with the consultants and back with the organization that was doing the due diligence. And all of a sudden, you see yourself growing, not out of, I want to learn this, but I have to learn this if I want to finish this particular thing and get to where I want to get to. Yeah. And that's how we interact with things as a team. As co-founders, we question each other, and see, okay, do we need, is there something that we need to learn that we don't know yet? And this is one of these examples of how that might happen.
And I guess the learning never stops when you're an entrepreneur.
It should never stop whether you're an entrepreneur or not. But if the learning stops when you're an entrepreneur, you're dead in the water. So you're definitely not going. And that's the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is thinking that you know rather than actually knowing. And as an entrepreneur, it is more important to unlearn what you know versus actually learning what you are going to be learning next. So, and it's like a glass, is it full? You're going to have to spill some of that water out in order for you to put some more in, or coffee, depends on what you're kicking the first thing in the day. So, yeah.
Okay. So when you're hiring individuals for any of your ventures or even in Mubashir, do you ever look, considering your background, do you ever look for a business degree if they're applying for a business role?
So the term business degree is really a very general term that can have many different, let's say, silos of degrees or different components or categories within it. And it also, that's the first thing. The second thing is, what role are they applying for? Is this person an accountant? Or are they a salesperson? Are they for example, business developer within that sales category? All these things really change. If someone's coming to me and is going to be holding my accounts, then I need to ensure that they have an accounting degree. Why? Because it's an art that hasn't really changed over time. There are a set of rules and principles that drive how accounting statements are created, and when you get audited, every auditor is looking at it from nearly the same lens. When it comes to business development, that's not the case. You can go through 100 business books, read as many marketing books as you want. If you stay inside 4 walls, you're not getting business. So I'm more interested in the track record of the person who I'm sitting with, and the energy that they're coming with in order for them to say that this is how I'm going to be driving value. This is how I'm going to be making you money, to say it very straight up, right? And then I would question that particular individual from this perspective versus the degree that they come with. Great, you have a degree, that's good. That's for you. But what's for me is the track record that you're creating or are going to be creating. Now, having said that, having a degree, I want to just put this as a caveat, is an indication to me that someone has academic grit, so they can sit down in one place, make a decision that they want to learn something, and they can go through the process of actually learning it and completing it. That is important, okay? That doesn't have to come with a business degree. It can come with any form of degree that is reputable and that people know is hard, yeah? But that is one element without taking into account the others, and you need the others in entrepreneurship to be successful.
I kind of agree with that, actually.
Kind of. What's the other part?
I do think there are some things that a degree can teach you that you can't get on the job, and also vice versa. I have a master's degree in marketing, and that has taught me a lot of research skills that I still use to this very day. And I think this is something that I would never have learned outside of academia. And I feel like for my job, at least, this is a major component that I really need to be able to excel. So I guess I'm talking about personal experience here. But yeah, to some extent, I do see the truth in your statement.
Experience goes a very long way. So speaking from experience definitely gives credibility. And I agree with that. Yeah. But there are many paths to knowledge. So having a business degree teaching you something, today's world, yesterday may be different, right? I'm talking about today's world. So we have to adapt to change. There are so many paths to information, and then from information to a higher status, which is knowledge, and then to higher status, which is wisdom. Wisdom usually is through interaction with people and through an internal conversation that you're having with yourself and really trying to understand life in a much, much deeper way. That's where wisdom comes from. But knowledge, that's accessible. Now, if you do it through acquiring, for example, I'll give you an example. My dad once told me about a leadership course that he attended. And this individual told everyone to kind of, speak about themselves and then speak about how, what changes that they're going to be doing. And then the individuals that were there, most of them were saying, so what you need to do is this, and then what you need to do is that, and then the coach was saying, he said, no, not me, you. And they kept going, yeah, but what you need to do, he said, no, not me, you. So you need to say, I need to do 1, I need to do 2, I need to do 3. Now, it's very difficult to come to that level of realization and mindfulness without the coaching of somebody else or the guidance of somebody else. Now, that can happen in the right, put that in 2 quotes, in the right kind of education, curriculum or degree or interaction with the right kind of lecturer who really does understand how to extract the best value out of you. And that could fall within what you just mentioned now, which is essentially getting that piece of information that you wouldn't have gotten potentially through the path that you were going through in business.
Absolutely. I do think, though, that there is one major element, like you said, that you can't get a comprehensive understanding of just through a degree, and that is people skills, which I find very, very important in business. So yeah, how did you get the hang of that, going from an introvert to like going into the world of business? How did you train yourself to become more of a people person?
That is a very good question. It was very hard. I think getting burnt, so getting scars through experience, going through a series of failures on many levels. And then you have 2 choices, right? You have the choice to do nothing or to do something that might be negative, in which case you have decided in doing nothing that you cannot go forth with entrepreneurship, and you decide that this is who I am, I want to stay this way, and I want to, etc. Or you can decide to change. And in that change, what tends to happen is that the pendulum really swings, at least for me, swung all the way to the other side, to a point where it almost was, this guy's an extreme extrovert. Okay, why? Because it was that shock to the system. And then it took a while for it to then recalibrate into a center. So time is a very important component. Reflection is a very important component. And just really going through the scars, you need to lift, your dasha sleeve or whatever it is that you have and kind of say, these are the scars that I have. And it's because I decided to do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that goes, it's a very personal thing. So every individual does that for themselves. At least that's my story. So, yeah.
Sounds like a very difficult transition, but hey, you did it.
Yeah, I'm glad for it. And I think it helped me to become a person who I am, more proud of being today. It came with faults as well, but these faults are things that we constantly work on. I constantly work on in order to try and improve. And nothing comes without, in my opinion, nothing comes without its negative side as well. So it has to be worked on, and it needs to be constantly, it's a constant struggle. to become a better person. It's not a free ride, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So I'm curious to know, so we've talked about the business degree, we've talked about the practical experience, but now we have a third thing coming, and that's artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I wanted to know, what do you think of that? Is that like a faster way of getting all the business skills that you need to become successful?
Yeah, the big two words, AI.
AI.
I was sitting in the boardroom today, and I had one of my colleagues who said, Raif, did you hear about the new update, to the software? I was like, what update? It was like, your device, Android device, all of a sudden has, and the new update turns into this AI thing. So you have all the applications, etc. I again, with a disclaimer, okay, this is what I heard. So it's interesting how AI is coming, and it's already here, okay? Those who know how to capitalize on it will be able to get way ahead of those who don't, for sure, and are already way ahead, as a matter of fact. You have students using ChatGPT today to, make assignments. And then you have teachers who are putting the assignments in ChatGPT saying, have you written this? So it's really, it's the same game that hackers have always played with those who are developing, softwares, arguable whether they're this one and the same entity. But anyways, but that's the cycle of life. It's the push and pull. Now, AI is a medium. It's here to stay. It's growing. And I believe that learning how to capitalize on it in a very mindful way so that we gain its benefits, but at the same time are cautious and aware of the downsides that it also comes with. As I said previously, nothing comes, with like a free pass, especially in our society, our culture, our identity. And that's why when I first started, I said, I'm a Muslim first. Why? Because the identity component of understanding who you are and then breaking down the value systems that drive every action and thought that is driven from there is a very important starting point to have. But saying, look, AI, I don't want to use it. I don't think this is going to serve anyone. That's going to be the guy who's standing in a moving treadmill and saying, I'm going to get there. But they're going to get there, but it's going to be in the opposite direction.
Yeah, absolutely. There's even degrees about AI coming out left, right, and center now. People are actively trying to learn more about it so they can excel in whatever work they do.
Correct.
It's going to every industry now.
That's a very interesting thing that you point out with regards to degrees in AI. So these two words together, it needs to be kind of put within a qualification, okay? Which is what? AI is so new and it is changing so fast that there is no way an academic institution can build a static degree for it. It's just not possible. So what tends to happen is that you have these companies that have R&D budgets and want to be in the AI game and are participating in the AI game, creating degrees. And these degrees are, you've worked with us on this project, and therefore you are up to date with X or Y or Z. And then you have education entities who are tying up with these companies in order to stay relevant. So it is very important to understand that even the way education institutions are morphing is changing because of AI. And if education entities want to stay relevant, they're going to have to increase that in-touchness with industry and industries that apply these different kinds of sciences. So that's just the caveat that comes with AI and kind of getting accredited. Because, you're accredited today. If you stay for 2 months, 3 months, maybe even less, it's arguable. It's not my forte. But all of a sudden, you're irrelevant if you haven't participated.
Yeah, that gave me a fresh perspective on higher education and AI as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Before we conclude the interview, is there anything else you would like to add?
What would I like to add? So one thing I would say, apart from ensuring that the core characters and personalities of our next generation that we are forming, because at the end of the day, they're the entrepreneurs of tomorrow. They are the workforce that are going to be feeding the entrepreneurial organizations of tomorrow. So it's very important to really link up education, even in its primary stage, to how can they think as entrepreneurs and develop entrepreneurial skill sets. And I believe that's something that we're still lacking and something that we should be seriously thinking about. And that means connecting entrepreneurs with education institutions to see how can we take some of these DNA skills, if you like, and then plug them in. And one of these skills are the ability to change, to adapt to change. Can you change fast enough? And how are we training that into our next generation? If they're not able to adapt, you're going to be educating them for 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, and then they hit the workforce, and all of a sudden they realize that they're not relevant anymore. And they have nothing that they can do about it, or they don't know how to do anything about it. So the other one is the skills associated with analyzing. And that's where I feel that, for example, getting an engineering degree is a very important thing, because it creates a model in your mind on how do you solve problems. And so you take the problem-solving model, not necessarily information, you forget all the information, but that model is what you start applying into, that friction that you're going to be interacting with life. So this is the second component. And that's pretty much it. Just get started. If you can do that and you can keep getting up after you get knocked down, I think you have a chance of being an entrepreneur.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you so much. This was a very, very insightful interview, and I'm so glad we got to have you here.
It's an honor being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.